My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
Does he seem looser? I don't know. Hartsy's kind of a ornery bugger, right? So you don't really know. But no, I mean, you could go through our group, right? You could talk about our group being that way. We were really tight. When you're not scoring and all that stuff, and we didn't have some success, and it wears on, certainly wears on leaders and guys like that, maybe a little bit more, that he wants to make a difference.
That, of course, is Wild Coach Dean Evason talking about an ornery bugger. Ryan Hartman, I can confirm, as can Jessi Pierce, that is accurate. He is an ornery bugger, to say the least. It's Judd's Hockey Show. If you don't recognize the other guy, it's because Declan Goff is off, seeing his brother in Carolina, AJ Fredrickson, who joins us at least once a week ordinarily on this show as well, producing and co-hosting today, along with Jessi Pierce from Bar Down Beauties fame. Also covers the Wild for the NHL.com website, among other endeavors. All right, Jessi, let's start here. So the homestand started off pretty negatively. What, a 5-1 loss to the Golden Knights. Didn't start off well. The Wild, though, comes back to win their last 3. They are now at 67 points, which puts them 5 behind Dallas for first place in the Central Division. And just to be clear, because of games in hand, Colorado's still in 3rd place. So the Wild is technically still in the last wild card spot, but they're only 6 behind the Golden Knights for the top seed. What is your current take on this team? Because it's an interesting team. It's a team that still is scuffling to score goals, but certainly the last 3 games have been more positive.
I mean, the consistency is there in the past 3 games. That's the biggest thing. We have said time and time again, and I hate to reiterate myself, but they would just listen. They're a defensive team. They are a shutdown defensive team. This is not the team from last year. This is not one that's going to be sexy scoring the goals. They are a team that's going to be shut down defensively. And the opponents are starting to pick up on that too. I mean, coming in yesterday, LA Kings Todd McLennan said that's what he's expecting from this game. He's expecting to be 1-0, 2-1, whatever it might be. And it ends up being 2-1. So I think that's a good thing. I think they're comfortable playing in this role. I think Minnesota has noticed that they're not going to be able to put up 5 on an opponent. They're going to just have to rely on their defense and on Filip Gustavsson, who has been tremendous. It's no coincidence that Minnesota has now won 3 straight, closes out the homestand 4-2-1, with Gus getting 3 of those starts and 3 straight wins. So, I mean, he's been a huge component. You'd love to see a couple more goals go their way, but I think the puck's bouncing the right way for Minnesota too, which also, you hate puck luck, but that's a variable to be considered as well.
And that's the sport. So question for both of you. Jessi, we'll start with you. You talk about Gus and Dean talked about Hartman, who now has 3 goals in his past 2 games, scored actually 2 nice goals last night. How much of what we're seeing do you believe in? Like, is this Gustafsson sustainable? Like, he's playing unbelievable right now, but like, do you say what Middleton said last night, which is Hartsy's got his swagger back? Do you see that? Do you see Gustafsson playing in a way that he can continue? Like, that's where I'm torn, because this team has been so inconsistent at times. I'm not sure how much I'm totally buying in, but just from what you've seen, how much are you buying the positives that you're seeing?
I'll buy into the Gus positivity. I think he's never been given the opportunity like he has here. And when the alternative is Marc-Andre Fleury, who has just been absolutely struggling, I will ride the Gus bus as suggested for as long as we need to. I mean, he's also doing this against teams that are very high offense, very high octane scoring. I mean, LA had come in winning 4 straight and putting up 5 or more goals in those 4 wins. So for him to really shut them down, again, credit to the defense as well. Jacob Middleton, Jared Spurgeon in particular, who were huge with block shots. But I think Gus has this cool, calm demeanor about him, whether he wins or loses, which is so strong and so solid. He has this poise and confidence. So I have a lot of faith in that. I am excited to see how long that continues. I hope Dean Evason continues to put Gustafsson in the right situations. I'm sure they'll have to split back to back with Columbus and Toronto coming up, but we'll see what plays out there. I would give Gus the start in Toronto if I were Dean. On the Ryan Hartman side of thing, again, it was an anomaly to see that man score 33 goals. Now, this being said, that second goal in particular last night against the Kings was so good. It reminded you that Hartman has the capability to be a very skilled scorer. Certainly he's got his confidence back, and whether that comes with a little bit of swag, we'll see. But I think all in all, Hartman's just playing smarter hockey. I think having sat him as a healthy scratch a couple games back, feels like a lifetime ago now at this point, really got into him. He knows that he cannot be taking those dumb penalties. So not necessarily whether Hartman's scoring or not, as long as he's just being a smart two-way player, that's what I need out of him. Naturally, he's going to be able to pick up some points being on that top line. And right now he's looking very comfortable within that top line center. So Hartman still TBD, but give me all the positivities for Filip Gustavsson.
Age?
Yeah, Gustafsson, I'm liking a lot. When they traded for him back in the offseason, it was one of those, that he was a somewhat high draft pick, especially for a goalie with Ottawa, but they have just been, for the longest time, a terrible defensive team, and they're starting to turn it around in their organization, but it's one of those, it's same thing when you had Talbot come here originally, or even a Dubnyk back in the day, where Dubnyk, I think, and him are a little bit different cases, but it's such better defensive core in front of them than where a lot of the shots he's facing are lower threat, lower angle. So it's easier to just, cast it away and not really think too much of it. But in terms of riding the hot hand, I think you have to. And they've shown coaching wise, that's what they want to do. We've seen instances where Capo Kakinen was the guy that they were leaning on for times, whether it was injury or just because he was the number one choice at the time. And I think they're going to probably do that again. Marc-Andre Fleury is a seasoned veteran. He's a future Hall of Famer, but he strikes me as a guy, and I'm sure you both have a better insight to this, that his ego will not be affected by them taking him aside and saying, hey, you've struggled recently. You know it. You've admitted it. We're going to go with this other kid who is not necessarily overshadowing you, but he's going to help us win games. And that's what we need to do right now, because we're in a hunt for the playoffs. We're in that final wild card spot. But as Judd mentioned, top of the show, they're not super far off one of the higher seeds either. It's a very congested middle of the pack. So I think Gustafsson has exceeded my expectations. I expected his numbers in play to be better than it was with Ottawa, but he's showing that he can be much more than that suitable backup who is a placeholder, where it was that kind of bridge to get to Jesper Wallstedt. But now you have to think, do they want to extend him? How long? For how much? Or what's the plan there moving forward? And, they're juggling cap space as it is. What's the plan there? And I think it probably happens maybe in the off season rather than sooner. Ryan Hartman, I think it took him a little longer to adjust coming back from injury than what a lot of fans wanted, but he was out for a while, and it's tough to come back after that much time, where you started the season, you looked okay, and then you go away, and then you come back. You're almost shaking off that preseason rust in a sense once again. And so a lot of dumb mental mistakes, taking a lot of penalties. He gets the healthy scratch and he gets the message, but that's what we've seen last season. And one of the guys that 1.7 million cap hit, I mean, one of the best in the league for what he did last season. This season's been a little debatable, but he's turned it around. And last night, I think, is a nice showing of what probably most people expected once again, and hopefully what is more to come, because if he can keep that up and has that attitude back of I'm between Zuccarello and Kaprizov, and he can complement them well, good enough, maybe not what Sam Seal was doing at times where he maybe is going to overstep his skill ability, but Ryan Hartman, I think, knows the player that he is and where he complements into that first line.
To start with Hartman, I hope this doesn't embolden them, though, to think this still works. So because Bill Guerin, Dean perhaps as well, and I'm sure that when Hartman's playing well, Dean loves him. But the one thing that it strikes me that the Wild does is they basically play money ball with centers, which is Kaprizov and Zuccarello are so good that we can get by going cheap between them, which I don't really like. And so I think it's good. I think it's fine that Hartman is playing well right now, but I mean, I would not read a ton into this. On Gustafsson, I think all three of us, and especially Jessi, you are very hesitant to get high on goaltenders, and I agree completely, because they're so up and down. We don't know. The one thing I like about Gustafsson, and I don't know if it's sustainable, but I think it is from a stylistic standpoint, his style doesn't feel fluky. Like when Dubnyk was going well, he would literally stand on his bleeping head. But if you go back to the bad goals or the great saves, they were all, I mean, there was just this big guy making these plays, and it's like sometimes he'd kick the puck in and sometimes he'd make these unbelievable kick saves. Gustavsson, the thing that I absolutely didn't know about and really like is the style. Like, he is so squared up to the puck and he makes it look simple because I think he plays a simple game, and that's a compliment. So, like, that's the one thing that I've been trying to think of, which is, okay, the playoffs start. He's probably, or he should start the playoffs with the way he's going. Does this style win in the playoffs? And I think if he doesn't get too outside of himself, Jessi, it could translate, because again, it doesn't feel like it's this fluky, I'm flopping around, oh my God, I'm making great saves and now I'm not. It feels like there is a strategy to his goaltending style that actually can translate to big games without it abandoning him because things go sideways.
Cue all the haters who are going to say Marc-Andre Fleury starts in the playoffs because they wanted Talbot to start last year and yada yada.
Yeah.
By the way,
right.
Cam Talbot wasn't that good. Anyway, Filip Gustavsson, I think you nailed it on the head there, Judd. It's a simple way in the best way possible. I mean, and again, you have to give credit to the defense for allowing him to see the puck as well as he has been seeing it. I mean, some of the goals that just slip through are what they are, but you're right, they're not like Devin Dubnyk where they're just these egregious ones. And his style is almost completely opposite of Marc-Andre Fleury. Marc-Andre Fleury has the theatrics. He has the spinning motions, the windmills, the really fun highlight reel saves, where as Filip Gustavsson, again, takes that very calm approach to the way he sees the puck, the way he squares up to the puck, and the way he makes a save. There's nothing fancy about it, but that works. That gets you by. I mean, he has just been tremendous to watch. And again, his demeanor afterward, whether it's a win or a loss, is always the same, which people might say is very boring, but I'll take boring. If boring gets you wins and gets you the 2 points that you need, absolutely, I will take a boring goaltender over amazing saves. As hard as I am on goalies, as you mentioned, Judd, I like what Filip Gustavsson is doing, and he's turning me into a goalie fan as of late.
Whoa.
I know. I know. I
That's
can't even
shocking
believe
to
it.
hear, because you hate goaltenders.
I hate goaltenders.
Well, I shouldn't say hate. You despise them with a lot of
They just need to be better.
vitriol. I think the thing about, just to use a cliche, I think the thing about Gustafsson I appreciate is he plays a quiet game. And you're right. I mean, and Flowers is going to be, as AJ said, the guy is a Hall of Fame, first ballot. But, he plays a game that comes from when I was a kid, flashy saves. He makes a glove save and then holds it for a tick so that the camera can get the great shot, which is all awesome. Gustafsson plays a very quiet, self-contained game, but I actually like that because it feels like that has at least, and look, he could fall apart, okay? So disclaimer here, but at least that feels like it's a sustainable way to play. So yeah, look, he has to continue to start. If pride gets in the way here of either the Flower or the GM or coach, that's a problem. That Colorado game could very well come back to bite them square in the ass yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a game in which the Wild dominated.
Right.
Like that wasn't it's too bad it was such a close game. That was a game in which when you are as offensively challenged, which I want to get to in a second, as this team is, and you got a dude that gives up 3 goals on 9 shots and looks terrible. And I mean, that was a Gustafsson start. Like it should have been. Mm-hmm. Every other day, home games worked out perfect. So, but let's get to that, because the play of late and the wins and to your point, Jess, beating a Kings team that has been scoring a ton of goals is great. But let's talk about the offense still, okay? Because we can try and get past that. But I went back and did the math. In the past 10 games, the Wild is averaging 2.1 goals per game. And if you look at the scores, 2-1. Oh, and that's including shootout goals that are counted as the final goal for a win, which is BS. Mm-hmm. So they are actually, when you look at 5-on-5 power play, the real sport, they're averaging fewer than 2.1 goals per game. They have 5-on-5 goals in the last 2 games, 3 against Nashville, 2 last night against the Kings. That's as many as they had in the previous 7 games combined. What I want to talk about here is the potential before the March 3rd deadline, you guys, of making a trade for a goal scorer, okay? Mm-hmm. And I am now seeing the name Patrick Kane thrown around more. I think Russo reported that it would take a second round pick, which, if that's the case, is not a really high draft pick. It's a high pick, but it's certainly a return that I think a lot of people would find palatable. How much would you help this team offensively? Just in the sense of how much do you think is here that the addition of a Kane would actually help you make a run? Knowing that Billy dove into the deep end of the pool last year, and they didn't get out of the first round with a team that had Fiala and far more firepower. So, Jessi, I'll start with you. Where do you think, what is your appetite for this team attempting to add another scorer in thinking that could actually help you win a playoff series or two?
But do you need to go to the trade block in order to find that scorer? Why not dip down to find Sammy Walker? Adam Beckman, very close to getting his first NHL goal. But, I know people have been clamoring for Beckman. You still have Marco Rossi down there, too. I'm not in any hurry to get him up there. And yes, I still stand by using him as trade bait if you want to. But I don't know that you necessarily have to go to the trade block. Patrick Kane, obviously, similar to Marc-Andre Fleury, carries that weight, that name, that energizes a fan base, energizes an organization. And he can still play. No question about it. That's your number one center, if not your number two, just to spread out some of the scoring. Because to me, Judd, that's the bigger concern at the lack of scoring is it's the same guys night after night. It's always Kirill, Ryan Hartman now there, Joel Eriksson, but you're still missing Jordan Greenway contributing. Freddie Gaudreau has not scored since the beginning of January. Matt Boldy has been pretty snake bitten as of late. So, you still need those complementary scorers to start getting things going. When Marcus Foligno returns, which sounds like he's very close, maybe coming up on this road trip, he needs to start chipping in again. Not that he's the primary goal scorer or Greenway either, but when you're getting 2 or 3 guys on Kaprizov every single night, somebody else has to step up and put the puck in that. Last night, Ryan Hartman being that guy. But to the initial question, I don't know. I'm hesitant to make any big egregious moves come trade deadline on March 3rd because this team to me is not a true contender. It's great to get to the playoffs, but if they get bounced in the first round, it's not as disappointing as it maybe has been in years past, because to me, it's not a rebuild, but it's certainly not a team that is suited to make a true cup run. So I don't know that you need to do much to shake it up to close out the year.
AJ, what do you think?
It's kind of what Jessi said first. I agree with you. This team does not it doesn't have that aura around them where you turn on the game and you're like, they're going to win, they're going to score however many goals, and they're going to do it in a nice fashion. It's like you're biting nails for 60 minutes, and whether they want to play for the first 20 and then they take the second period off, and then it's like, all right, now we got to actually try again because we let the Kings score with 20 seconds left, and all of a sudden it's a game. And why would we ever just want a nice, casual, relaxing 60 minutes of hockey? Trading for
Minnesota
somebody,
sports, right?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, exactly.
Just go with the whole thing.
Trading for somebody rather than the call up brings that, once again, just like Jessi said, it brings that energy to a club. Last year, you go out and you get Marc-Andre Fleury, huge name, private jet treatment. Billy G brings him in itself. That carries that. All right, we're now being backed by picks, we're being backed by the front office. They are expecting a certain level of play and a certain level of, we're going to get this far. Whether you want to or not, you are going to get this far in the postseason and make a run. Calling up a guy like Sammy Walker or now Adam Beckman, who looked good last night, that doesn't do it for a lot of people as much as it maybe should, just because it's, it's an unknown guy.
Right.
He doesn't really have that track record, whereas Patrick Kane, how many guys are nicknamed Showtime? He's got the signature Selly. You can see however many iconic, and it haunts the Wild still to this day, the slow roll shootout, 17 moves inside the slot and then past Josh Harding. He's got the track record and he's got the repertoire, but I don't know whether Bill Guerin believes the same amount that he did last year. And I think that's what it's going to come down to, because he seems like a very straight shooter. He's not going to make a move if he feels like they're not in a position to benefit from it. He's not going to trade for trading's sake and leverage that capital, because he did a great job retaining a lot when acquiring Fleury last year and not really putting them in a hole draft-wise and giving Judd Brackett all the tools that he kind of needed to still build for the future, because they're still held so much down by the dead salary cap with the buyouts. But it does benefit if you do believe in the team to go further by trading for a guy. And it sounds like I would do a second round pick, honestly, for Patrick Kane. You know, that's less than what I anticipated. But if you have to throw in a second and a decent prospect, that would be towing the line for me. I would like to regress and say, don't do anything. If anything, you're gonna load off a couple pieces and ride it out and say, you spin it with the angle of, you prove it to me that you deserve to be backed. Let's ride this hot streak. You know, we've built whatever inside the building. Let's just do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I agree completely. And look, too, I'm sort of jaded because this team, you know, going back to Chuck Fletcher, has gone for it. They've made deadline trades. And let's just say they haven't worked out nearly as well as planned. And so I think that there was a belief, and Jess, I'm curious if you think the same thing from talking to people. I think that there was a true belief that last year a window was open and that team had potential to make a run. And I mean, that's why the first round loss to the Blues was so disappointing. But I also think that belief then sort of evaporated out to a reality of, you know, the buyouts on Parise and Suter were going to come back to bite them at some point in time. And they knew exactly what the price of poker was. And so I just have a hard time with a rental now, like continuing down that path. And plus, you know what? I don't know that Patrick Kane at his current, you know, not Patrick Kane in his prime, but this Patrick Kane, I don't know that putting him on a line with Boldy is like, that's it. Because keep in mind, Kevin Fiala is pretty damn good. The Blues shut him down and you were screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you guys. Like if I'm Bill Guerin, I'm like, okay, guys, you've been very up and down. If you can make a run, that's awesome. Do it. You know, Ryan Hartman, if you want to go out there and not take 5 dumb penalties, and you want to score some goals, you are our first line guy. This is it for you. You're not going to be our first line guy next year, but you know, I mean, Billy had to have another come to Jesus with Greenway, who immediately said, I don't really need that. Yeah, dude. Yes, you do. If I can trade Dumba, I still would now. And when Faber, when the Gophers get done, I would plug him in. But you know, if you want to call guys up from Iowa, I think that's fine. But yeah, I don't know that I'm going rental, and I certainly am not going more than one. And this team is so well positioned now because, I mean, none of us are trade prudes as far as, you know, farm system protected at all cost. When the time is right, awesome, trade guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like the time is right here. Like that's just and I don't think this team has shown you enough because, you know, Bill told you guys that, Jessi, at the midway point, which is the team will tell me, I'm sorry, but the end of a 7-game homestand, the last 3 games, is not where I'm like, okay, they're talking to me now. Like that was from the moment Bill said that, right?
Right.
And they've been roller coasters. So I am completely with your camp, which is if you can win, awesome. Let's see what this team can do. If you want to call up prospects, let's see what they can do. But this isn't last year, and last year was disappointing. And I have a hard time seeing a first round win again. I might be wrong, but I just do.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Like I said, I mean, if the deadline comes and goes with nothing more than a 2025 4th round pick because you're a conduit in some sort of trade, fine, whatever. I think you got to play the long game. I'd rather maybe, you know, build up a couple good picks or do little minor things are fine if you're going to do anything. I just don't have the belief. And that also goes to, yes, it's good to maybe look at what Matt Dumba could yield back. If you get something great in return, awesome, because then you're not giving him away for free come this summer when he walks right into free agency. Right. However, I think you do have to still consider that locker room culture and aspect. And we all know Bill Guerin is very high on that. That being said, does Patrick Kane fit into that? I don't know. Matt Dumba is a huge part of that. You saw that I was out at his camp earlier this week, and about half the team showed up for him to be a part of this camp on a day off, outdoor hockey when it was snowing. So I think that's something that people forget about Dumba. You can be frustrated with his play, but he is a huge piece to that team with the guys and with that mentality. So that's the other reason where it's like, I don't even need to trade Dumba at this point. I think you could keep him because that piece will at least get you to the playoffs, because I'd still like to see the playoffs. I only get paid if they make the playoffs. If they don't, I'm done. So let's
Need a
at
new
least
contract,
get there.
Jessi.
I know someone needs to.
You need to
I'm looking for a new
renegotiate.
agent. Yeah. The agent, aka myself, not working too great.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Point on Dumba, well taken. You're right. Like, I don't think about that stuff at times, but yes, it might be best just to stand pat completely, because if he is that popular, which we know he definitely is,
Right.
then yes, that's a huge thing. I also think that the team that trades for Kane, I mean, that's a pure mercenary pickup. And if you do that, I mean, any team that trades for Kane, I think it's like it's on for a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And if it's like, well, it's on for hey Patrick, we hope we can get a first round win, which is what the Wild would be saying. Look, I just don't think the timing's right. I don't think the timing's right. And if this team can pull itself up by its bootstraps, awesome. And if it can't, that's fine too, because I think the future is bright. But yeah, I'm tired of this team at times overstepping its bounds. And again, I don't think 3 games tells you a ton.
Yeah.
They're still not scoring goals. They're
No.
still not scoring goals.
Well, and Kane in a Wild jersey just gives me an icky feeling. Like the Wikipedia page said he was owner of the Minnesota Wild for quite a long time, because he owned the Minnesota Wild quite literally every time he played them. So that just
it was the
doesn't rub me the
stanchion,
right
damn
way.
it. At the X. The stanchion's what screwed him. I mean, that was completely unfair. In your building, in your own building, not even in United Center. It happened in your building. What a bunch of crap. All right, last thing, you guys. Athletic reported today, I believe, the story came out from Joe Smith, that the Wild, that the agent for Brock Besser with the Canucks, Ben Hankinson of Edina and Gopher fame, has been given permission by the Canucks to talk to Bill Guerin and the Wild about trying to work out something for his client to return home. Now, Besser, let's see, I've got it right here, has 2 years left on his contract at a $6.65 million AAV. I was told a couple of weeks ago that contract, like, the Wild likes him, but it's just a non-starter. So I don't know, and I don't know what the Player Association allows you to do with current contracts. I don't think that you can change them for sure. And so, like, the Canucks would have to absorb payroll into next year for this to work, which would mean that the Wild would probably have to give up a lot. Long story short, Jessi, what is your interest in Besser? Because I will say this, if it's not a rental, I at least am more open-minded to it than a rental. But this sounds like it would probably be too high a price because of the fact the Canucks would have to hang on to salary.
Yeah, they'd have to retain a bunch of his salary because Minnesota, frankly, can't afford it. I mean, that's just how it goes. That's why they got rid of Kevin Fiala. You can't afford it. That's why they'll probably get rid of Dumba. Can't afford it. It's just a simple money in, money out situation right now. And I don't think Vancouver would take that on. They're paying 2 coaches, 3 coaches at least a salary right now, in addition to any of these players that they're trying to move as well. My guy Bruce, they're paying him off.
Bruce,
well.
There's your check.
And Travis Green, I think they're still paying Travis Green too. So they're kind of a hot mess out there. And I do think Brock Besser has struggled the past couple of years, and I think so much of that is family induced, and there's injuries. He's battled injuries too for a young age and a young career. He's had quite a few setbacks with those, but I do think if he were to come to Minnesota, it would put him in a good spot mentally, and I think it would maybe reignite something. But bottom line, can't afford it. I love Ben Hankinson. It's an agent doing agent speak, right? Getting the pot stirred, getting the conversation going. I don't see it happening. I would love to, but just probably not right now.
AJ, what do you think?
A lot of the same stuff. I mean, I don't like betting on somebody like moving geographically to like reignite their game. I do think it would probably do a good amount of help in a sense here with Brock Besser, just with everything he's gone through and dealt with, and the type of player that I hear he is and type of person I hear he is. Yeah. The money just doesn't make sense. You know, there's only a finite amount that they can work with, and it's just not feasible unless you cut, you're cutting weight somewhere else. And I don't think I'd want them to gamble on Besser if it means losing, a different person. And what it is, maybe there's a lot of hypotheticals that are attractive, but it would take a lot of, puzzle piecing, jigsawing together to get to that point to where I'd feel comfortable actually doing it with the money working out.
This strikes me, if it were to take place as a summertime thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it strikes me as because first of all, the price that you would have to give up more prospect wise to get them to retain. Like Besser intrigues me. Besser and Boldy on the same line intrigue me. But I don't think it's a deadline thing. I think it's a summertime thing, and at that point in time, I'm not saying it gets done. I just think that if the Canucks say, "Hey, Ben, feel free to talk to Bill," that is probably more of a draft time deal and conversation. I lied. Last thing, really. How fun are the Kings to watch?
So good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The speed. What happened there?
They finally got rid of Dustin Brown, moved in on some young kids.
Retired his number, I
Kopitar,
think,
yeah.
a couple
He's got a
nights ago.
statue. He got a whole
Dustin,
statue
he's a
outside.
little guy. He's just a small little guy, too.
I know.
He's a real little guy.
I know.
I saw him once. He was hurt late in his career and walked into the X in front of me. And I mean, this guy was known as an SOB, right? Like a cheap shot guy. It's like, you're really small. Just a little guy. You're a good hockey player, though. But man, are they fast.
Yeah, they've got a good thing going. There's no surprise why they're at top of their division right now. I mean, Kevin Fiala is a huge part of that. And I think people in Minnesota want to be agitated. Like, you knew he was going to be good there. You knew he was going to succeed there without question. Again, it's not that the Wild were like, we don't want Fiala. He's not good enough. We don't want to pay him that money. They can't pay him. Like, I don't know why people have such a hard time understanding that. It wasn't like we don't want Kevin Fiala anymore. It was, we can't afford you. Good luck, buddy. You'll go get your money elsewhere. And he's doing that in LA, and he's been a huge part of that. Anze Kopitar still has it, which is awesome. Adrian Kempe. And shout out to Minnesota's own Mikey Anderson as well. He got paid, but he's doing some really good things on the blue line, has been for a couple seasons too.
The Fiala thing that intrigues me is this. And you're right. Like, he had to be dealt. Unfortunate, but just the reality of the situation. The only thing that bugged me about that whole thing, and what's weird is these guys were close. How annoyed Dean got with him at times when the guy's a star player.
Right.
It's like, Dean, I know you want everyone to be responsible defensively, and I totally get that. And look, I do. I really get that. But that is such a coaching style from my youth, like in the 80s, right? If you're not going to be a two-way player, you're not going to play. Okay, that's cool, but this guy can score goals at will at times. I mean, last night he was phenomenal, and I know that's him because he's ticked off and trying to show the Wild something. But I mean, and I said this with Dex Jess a couple days ago. The one thing about Dean that scares me is they've got a lot of young kids coming up. Okay, a lot of young kids, and some of them are going to be, I know you're shocked by this, immature on and off the ice. And they're not going to necessarily do their jobs correctly, but that does not mean they're not talented, okay? And like, you got to wade through that as a coach now and develop them as best you can. And this whole thing right now with Kalen Addison is driving me crazy because it's like 4 games. And I know it sounds like he's not thrilled about it. And, he's made some comments to the press, and I'm sure Billy and Dean don't like that. But you're going to have more guys like this very soon coming up who are going to be instrumental to your team. And if you're going to like, okay, that's it, you're scratched, you're not going to play, that only goes so far. And then you just get tuned out. And so like that was the Fiala tipping point for me that concerned me, was Kevin Fiala had talent that the majority of that roster didn't have, and that sure as hell Dean didn't have as a player. So yeah, he screwed up at times, but that doesn't mean like he sat him for huge parts of periods.
Right.
It's like, no, Dean, that's not how we're going to do things here. We're going to develop guys. Anyway, that's my rant on Dean at times. I like the guy personally. Seems like a very nice guy, but that drives me crazy.
Do you mind if I ask you guys something real quick, just on your take? I don't know. And just because they played him last night, has Kevin Fiala been less streaky, or is it just the bigger market coverage of him? Because I haven't seen anything of like, hey, he shut off for a week, similar to what he did with the Wild at times. But then, now we're back to the 14-game burner where he's just boom, boom, boom. He's on fire. Like, he looked really good last night. It seems like every time I see anything about the Kings, he's somehow mentioned by either a power play assist or a flashy goal or something along those lines. It seems to me like he's been a little bit more of a consistent guy since moving out to LA.
Talk to me in the playoffs. Let's see what happens there.
That's a
Because
really good point. A really good point.
Yeah, he can disappear there.
I mean, that's really right. Like, I think
Well,
Kevin Fiala, you're
point.
probably right. I think he's probably found a little bit more consistency with his line mates, and again, I think he's given that opportunity from McClellan out there too. Like Judd said, Dean and Kevin, I think, butted heads probably more than most of us realized at times. No, but I think I'm curious to see if he continues this in the playoffs, then you're in trouble. Like, then the Kings are a legit thing. We've been jaded by playoff Kevin Fiala a time or two. So we know he can have a great regular season. He just ghosts everybody, doesn't call back, doesn't write any of that come April and May.
It looks like he had 4 goals in the month of November. The one thing to be cautious about age on the Kings, nobody cares out there.
Yeah.
So like you don't read a lot. Like they're not covered. It's not like here.
Yeah.
Which makes it great because you can go to the beach, play golf, and disappear. And so I think the coverage of him here, or just say he was in Toronto, Montreal, would be every day. His disappearing acts won't be covered as much. It's just like,
okay.
And then the totality of the stats is good. Because to your point, he goes on these burners where it's like, oh my God, you can't stop the guy. So
didn't LeBron throw shade at the Kings? Forget about the Kings the other day.
He thought they were the Knights. He thought they, or no, I'm sorry. He thought it was the Vegas Kings. He thought it was the Vegas Kings. And then he goes, it's the Kings? And they're like, no, it's the Golden Knights. And he goes, oh, that's right. The Kings are in Los Angeles, right? and then to make it worse, he goes, well, there's 2 Kings in Los Angeles.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, my
so
gosh.
he had to pat himself on the back after not knowing. But here's the really weird thing. He's involved with the Fenway Sports Corp group that owns the Penguins.
Nice.
So LeBron has a stake in a National Hockey League team and doesn't know the team from the National Hockey League. I'm not talking in Canada. I'm talking that plays in the building in which he plays cryptocurrency or whatever the hell it's called now.
What a beauty.
Anyway. All right, Jessi, thanks much. We'll talk to you next week. Age, great job. We'll talk to you in a couple days as well. Judd's Hockey Show. And of course, catch Jessi Pierce on Bar Down Beauties as well, where she'll be talking plenty of puck. And you talked to Basil McRae, real quick plug.
Oh, I just got off. Yep.
Okay,
he was fantastic.
Sorry.
We're going grabbing beers this weekend, Judd, if you want to come. It's going to be great. He's just so good. It's so funny. He is such like a family first type of guy. Like he had talked about, he just kind of fell into this assistant GM, still talks with all of his old buddies, but like he opted not to be at the Stadium Series alumni game to go watch his daughter play one of her final senior hockey games. And he's like, I was missing out so bad. Like just, yeah, for a rough and tough guy that he was, he's just a sweetheart.
The teddy bear. So when's that going to debut?
That'll debut on Monday.
Awesome stuff. All right, you guys, talk to you soon.
Bye.